Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness wasn't just any serial killer. She was the ultimate Black Widow. Born in Norway in 1859, she later moved to America, where she gained infamy as a killer. Gunness used personal ads to lure her victims, mostly men looking for companionship. But once they arrived at her rural Indiana farm, things took a deadly turn. She's believed to have murdered at least 14 people, though the actual number could be as high as 40. Her method was simple. She promised love and marriage, but delivered death instead, often poisoning or bludgeoning her victims before taking their money and burying them on her property. In 1908, her farmhouse mysteriously burned to the ground, and a body believed to be Gunness was found, although some speculate that she faked her death and escaped. What's truly chilling is the possibility that she could have gotten away with it. Belle Gunness may be one of the few serial killers who vanished, leaving behind a farm of buried bodies and unanswered questions. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. Charming, good-looking, and intelligent. He was the kind of guy people trusted without a second thought. But what they didn't know was that Bundy harbored dark and twisted desires. Between 1974 and 1978, he murdered at least 30 women, though many believe the actual number is much higher. His method? Bundy often pretended to be injured, using a fake cast or crutches to lure women into helping him. Once they were within reach, he would strike, knocking them unconscious before kidnapping, raping, and killing them. One of the most terrifying aspects of Bundy's case is how normal he appeared to be. He even escaped prison twice before being caught for good. His trial was a media sensation, and despite all the evidence, Bundy still managed to charm many people, even gaining admirers. Bundy was finally executed in 1989, but his name remains synonymous with terror. Have you ever wondered how someone could be so charming, yet so evil? Bundy was proof that evil doesn't always look like we expect it to. John Wayne Gacy. Next, we dive into the horrific case of John Wayne Gacy, a man who turned parties into nightmares. Gacy was a community man, a contractor who even performed as a clown at children's birthday parties. But beneath that jovial clown makeup lurked a man responsible for one of the most gruesome crime sprees in American history. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy tortured and murdered at least 33 young boys and men, many of whom he lured to his home under the guise of offering them work. His home was the stuff of nightmares, with 26 of his victims buried beneath his house in a crawl space. Gacy would handcuff his victims, pretend it was a magic trick, and then proceed to torture and kill them. When police finally uncovered his horrific crimes, Gacy showed no remorse. He was executed in 1994. The idea that a seemingly friendly man, known for making children laugh, could also be capable of such depravity is chilling. How could someone live such a double life for so long? That's the terrifying reality of Gacy's story. Jeffrey Dahmer. If you thought the previous killers were bad, Jeffrey Dahmer takes horror to an entirely new level. Dubbed the Milwaukee Cannibal, Dahmer's crimes were so horrific they've been burned into the public's memory. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer killed 17 young men. But that's not all. His crimes also included necrophilia, cannibalism, and the disturbing practice of preserving body parts as trophies. Dahmer would lure his victims back to his apartment with promises of drugs or money, then drug and strangle them. What came next was beyond horrifying. He would perform experiments on their bodies, often keeping parts of them in his refrigerator. His desire was not just to kill, but to have complete control over his victims, even attempting to turn them into zombies by injecting chemicals into their brains. Dahmer's reign of terror came to an end when one of his victims managed to escape and alert the police. When they entered his apartment, they found the nightmarish evidence of his crimes. Dahmer was sentenced to life in prison, but was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. Could anything be more disturbing than what went on inside Dahmer's apartment? The fact that it went on for years without anyone suspecting is truly terrifying. Gary Ridgway. Next up, we have Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. His killing spree lasted from the early 1980s until his capture in 2001, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Ridgway targeted vulnerable women, often sex workers and runaways, luring them with promises of money or work. Once he had them, Ridgway would strangle his victims and dump their bodies near the Green River, earning him his chilling nickname. Ridgway confessed to killing 48 women, though the actual number may be higher. What's truly terrifying is how long he was able to continue his spree. His ability to blend into society and avoid detection for so many years shows just how difficult it can be to catch someone capable of such evil. Ridgway was eventually caught thanks to DNA evidence and is currently serving life in prison. It makes you wonder, how many more like Ridgway are out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the next victim? Aileen Wuornos. When we talk about serial killers, it's easy to think of men, but Aileen Wuornos proved that women could be just as deadly. Wuornos, a sex worker, was responsible for the deaths of 7 men between 1989 and 1990. Her victims were all men who had picked her up for her services, but Wuornos claimed that each one had either raped or attempted to rape her, and that she killed them in self-defense. Wuornos's life was tragic from the start. She grew up in an abusive home, turned to sex work to survive, and was constantly on the run. Her story raises difficult questions about abuse, trauma, and whether she was a cold-blooded killer or a victim of circumstances. Whatever the truth, Wuornos's story became infamous, especially after the release of the 2003 film Monster. Wuornos was executed in 2002, but her legacy as America's most notorious female serial killer remains. Dennis Rader. Lastly, we have Dennis Rader, better known as the BTK Killer, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, his preferred method of murder. Rader killed 10 people between 1974 and 1991, and what made him unique was his desire for recognition. He would send taunting letters to the police and the media, describing his crimes in detail and daring them to catch him. What's most shocking about Rader is how ordinary his life seemed. He was a family man, a Boy Scout leader, and a trusted member of his community. But behind closed doors, he was a sadistic killer, living out his dark fantasies. Rader was finally caught in 2005 after sending a letter that helped police trace him. Imagine living next to someone for years, thinking they're completely normal, only to find out they've been leading a double life. That's exactly what Rader's neighbors experienced when he was arrested. Each of these serial killers had their own unique and terrifying story. From Ted Bundy's charm to Jeffrey Dahmer's grotesque acts, the ability of these killers to hide their true nature from the world is perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. What makes someone capable of such evil? That's a question that may never be fully answered. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the darkest corners of true crime, make sure to comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to share this video with friends who love crime stories. And of course, Subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. Stay safe, and remember, evil can hide in plain